Before you continue, I need you to think about something. What if you met a child who looked exactly the same 20 years later? Same face, same voice, same age. And everyone else remembered him, but differently. If you love deep psychological mystery stories like this, subscribe now, because this one gets darker the more you listen. This is the story of a boy who stopped aging in 1987. And no one knows why. It started in the summer of 1987 in a small town called Briar Hollow. Back then, Briar Hollow was the kind of place where nothing strange ever happened. One school, one grocery store, one movie theater. Everyone knew everyone. Until Daniel Mercer disappeared. Daniel was 9 years old. Blonde hair, quiet personality, liked drawing birds in his notebook. Teachers described him as observant. Kids described him as weird but nice. On July 14, 1987, Daniel walked home from school. He never arrived. There were no screams, no witnesses, no signs of struggle. His backpack was found 3 days later near the woods. Inside it, everything was normal. Lunchbox, homework, notebook. Except one page had been torn out. Police searched for weeks. Nothing. Months passed. Then years. Daniel Mercer became one of those unsolved town mysteries. Until 2007. 20 years later. A new family moved into Briar Hollow. With a boy, blonde hair, quiet personality, 9 years old. His name was Ethan Mercer. Daniel's younger brother? No. Daniel had no siblings. Ethan's looked identical to Daniel's old photographs. And when the school secretary saw him during enrollment, she went pale. Because Ethan's birthday was listed as July 14, 1978. The exact same birthday as Daniel Mercer. And that would have made him 29 years old. But he looked 9. The school assumed it was a paperwork error. The parents laughed it off, said there must be confusion. But the confusion didn't stop. Because the old librarian, Mrs. Hadley, recognized something specific. Not just his face, but his drawing style. One afternoon, Ethan sat alone drawing in the library. Birds. Exactly the same way Daniel used to draw them. Same detail, same angles, same unfinished wing style. Mrs. Hadley asked him gently, "Who taught you to draw like that?" Ethan looked up slowly and said something that made her hands shake. "I never finished the last one." She froze. "What last one?" "The one I was drawing before I went missing." Now here's where the story changes. Because Ethan didn't say before I was born. He didn't say before I moved. He said before I went missing. The room felt smaller. Mrs. Hadley pulled out the old yearbook from 1987, opened to Daniel Mercer's photo, placed it in front of Ethan. "Do you know this boy?" Ethan stared at the image for a long time, then quietly said, "That's me, but older." The parents were called. They denied everything. Said Ethan had a strong imagination. Said kids make up stories. But then more details started coming out. Ethan knew the layout of the old 1987 school building before renovations. He knew which locker used to stick. He knew about a teacher who retired before he was born. And he knew something else. Something only Daniel Mercer would have known. The torn notebook page. One night, Ethan told his mother, "I hid it under the third floorboard in my room." His mother didn't understand until Ethan described the house Daniel Mercer used to live in. The exact address, the exact room. And when the current homeowners were contacted, they checked. Under the third loose floorboard in the old bedroom, there was a folded, yellowed notebook page with a drawing of a bird, half finished. Now, pause for a second. Imagine being a parent. Imagine your 9-year-old child calmly describing a disappearance from 20 years ago, and every detail checking out. This wasn't horror, this wasn't fantasy, this was something else. And it was about to get worse. Because Ethan began remembering things he shouldn't. Not about being lost, but about not being allowed to age. He told a school counselor, "I tried to grow up once."
They reset me. The school counselor thought it was trauma imagination. Children create coping mechanisms. Children create alternate realities. But Ethan didn't look confused when he said it. He looked tired, like someone who had repeated something too many times. "What do you mean by reset?" the counselor asked gently. Ethan stared at the carpet, at the tiny blue patterns repeating over and over. "They don't like when I remember too much." "Who?" He blinked slowly. "The ones who keep the year the same." A chill moved through the room. Outside the window, recess laughter echoed faintly. Normal, bright, safe. But inside that office, something felt wrong. "How many times has it happened?" the counselor asked gently. Ethan hesitated. Then, quietly, "I stopped counting after 5. That night, Ethan's parents found him standing in the hallway at 2:17 a.m., not moving, just staring at the wall. His mother touched his shoulder. He flinched hard. "Ethan, what are you doing?" He turned slowly. "They're checking." "Who's checking?" He pointed at the ceiling. "They watch before it happens." His father turned on every light in the house, checked every room. Nothing. Doors locked, windows sealed, no sign of intrusion. But Ethan refused to sleep. He kept whispering, "If I remember too much, they take it back." The next morning, something small changed. Very small. So small most people wouldn't notice. The calendar on the kitchen wall. It said October 3rd, but Ethan insisted yesterday had been October 5th. His parents laughed, said he must be confused. But Ethan wasn't confused. He ran to his room, opened his notebook, flipped through pages. His drawings were gone. Not erased, not torn out, replaced. Instead of birds, there were blank pages, except one sentence written in the center of a page. "Stay within your age." The handwriting wasn't his. Now, listen carefully, because this is where people in Briar Hollow started paying attention. The old police chief from 1987 was still alive, retired, living quietly outside town. When he heard about Ethan, he drove in. He didn't believe in reincarnation. He didn't believe in ghosts, but he believed in patterns. And Ethan was a pattern. He sat across from the boy at the kitchen table, looked into his eyes. "You remember the woods?" he asked slowly. Ethan nodded slowly. "You walked there after school?" "Yes." "Why?" Ethan's breathing changed, slower, more distant. There was something waiting. "What?" "I don't know." "Was it a person?" Pause. "No." "Was it an animal?" Longer pause. "No." The chief leaned closer. What was it then? Ethan whispered, "A door." The room went silent. "A door in the woods?" the chief asked carefully. Ethan nodded. "It wasn't there before." "What did it look like?" "Like it was made from the night." His mother shifted uncomfortably. "This is just imagination." But Ethan continued. "It was standing between two trees. Open or closed?" "Half open." "And you went through?" Ethan's eyes filled with something older than fear. "Yes." Now here's the part that made the retired police chief stop breathing for a moment. Because back in 1987, when they searched the woods, they found something strange. Not a body, not footprints, but a clearing. A perfectly circular clearing. Trees bent outward unnaturally, like something had pushed from the center. They never explained it. They never reported it publicly, but it existed, and Ethan described it exactly, without ever seeing the police photos. "What was on the other side of the door?" the chief asked. Ethan looked at him, and for a second, his expression didn't look like a child's. It was still Briar Hollow, but wrong. How? No one was moving. "What do you mean?" "They were there, just paused." The chief felt a slow pressure building behind his eyes. "Like frozen?" "Yes." "And you weren't frozen?" "No." "Who else was moving?" Ethan swallowed. "They were." "Who?" "The ones who reset." That night, the chief couldn't sleep. He pulled out the old case files, yellowed papers, Polaroid photos, and one photo made his hands tremble. It was taken in the woods the week Daniel disappeared. In the background, between two trees, there was something. It looked like distortion, like the camera lens glitched. But now it looked like an outline, door-shaped. 3 days later, Ethan collapsed at school. No warning, no illness, just dropped. When he woke up in the hospital, he didn't recognize his parents. "Who are you?" he asked calmly. His mother started crying. "Ethan, it's us." He looked confused. "My name isn't Ethan." The room froze. "What's your name?" the doctor asked gently. He answered immediately. "Daniel." Medical tests showed nothing wrong. Brain scans normal, vitals stable, no signs of seizure. But Daniel, or Ethan, spoke differently now, more mature, less hesitant. "I stayed too long last time," he said quietly. The doctor asked what he meant. "They don't like when I stay past 9. His father gripped the hospital bed rail. "Who doesn't?" Daniel's gaze shifted toward the hospital security camera. "They're watching through the angles." And that's when something impossible happened. The hospital security footage glitched for exactly 17 seconds. Every monitor in the building froze. Clocks stopped. Heart monitors flatlined visually, but patients were fine. And when the system restored, Ethan was asleep again, peaceful, 9 years old. When he woke up, he didn't remember anything, but something had changed, very small, very subtle. The old police chief's retirement photo on the town hall wall now showed a different year, 1988 instead of 1987. Only he noticed. He stared at it for 5 minutes, certain it had changed. He checked old newspapers. Some articles were dated differently now. Tiny shifts, tiny corrections, like reality adjusting, resetting. Ethan began drawing again, but this time he drew the door, over and over, a black doorway standing alone, and behind it, stars. Not sky, stars, like space. One evening, his mother asked softly, "Why do you keep drawing it?" Ethan answered without looking up, "Because I think I can close it." Now here's the truth. Something in Briar Hollow was looping. Not time exactly, but age. Daniel Mercer never aged past 9. He walked through something that didn't exist in normal space,
something that corrected him when he grew beyond a limit. He wasn't reincarnated, he was recycled, and every time he remembered too much, reset. New family, new identity, same face, same age, different year. The old police chief drove back to the woods alone one night, flashlight in hand. He found the clearing again, still circular, still wrong. He stepped into the center. The air felt heavier, like static electricity before lightning, and for a split second he saw it. Between the trees, the outline, the door, half open, and beyond it, movement.
The old police
not
chief
human,
did not
not
step
animal,
back.
something observing,
Most
weeding.
people would have convinced
Back
themselves
at home,
it was shadow,
Ethan woke up
imagination,
suddenly, sweat
age
on his
playing
forehead.
tricks.
He
But
ran
had
to the
seen
window,
too many
looked
real
toward the
horrors
woods,
in his life to
whispered,
mistake
"They
instinct."
found
And
him."
his instinct was
His mother
screaming.
rushed in.
The clearing
Who?
felt wrong
The
in a way
old
that
man.
had nothing to do with
Found
fear.
who?
It felt
Ethan's
edited.
voice dropped.
The trees leaned
They don't
outward,
like when
bark
someone
twisted
else
as
sees.
if something once pushed through them from the inside. The air carried a metallic scent, not blood, not rust, something colder. Then the door became clearer, not fully visible, more like the absence of the world behind it, a vertical darkness that did not absorb light, it swallowed it. Half open, just as Ethan described, the chief's flashlight flickered, the beam bent strangely near the outline, and from beyond that half-open shape, something shifted, not stepping out, just adjusting, like it had noticed him noticing it. His heart pounded, but his training kept him steady. "Daniel," he whispered into the clearing. The forest went silent, not gradual, instant. Crickets stopped mid-chirp. Wind cut off, leaves froze. 17 seconds, the same number as the hospital glitch. The chief's watch stopped ticking, and in those 17 seconds, something became clearer inside the doorway. Not a creature, not exactly. It looked like a silhouette made of broken geometry. Too many angles, too many edges bending inward and outward at once. And it leaned slightly forward, studying him. Then, sound returned. The watch ticked, wind moved, the doorway faded, gone, but the clearing remained. The chief did not sleep that night. Back in town, Ethan sat on his bedroom floor, drawing. He was drawing faster now, not carefully, urgently, page after page, door, stars, shapes beyond the threshold, and something new, a line of small figures standing in front of the door. Children, all identical, 9 years old, all looking outward, all looking trapped. His mother watched from the doorway, heart tight. Ethan? He didn't look up. They're stuck between. Who is stuck? He pressed harder with the pencil. The tip snapped. Versions. The next morning, something larger changed. Not a calendar, not a photo. The elementary school building itself. 3 parents swore the west hallway used to have blue lockers. Now they were gray. Maintenance insisted they had always been gray. Old yearbook photos, gray, always gray. Except one archived photo in the library microfilm showed blue, dated 1992, before Daniel disappeared. By afternoon, that microfilm image had developed a gray streak where blue once showed, reality correcting, quietly, precisely. Ethan stopped blinking as often. Teachers noticed first. He would stare at nothing for long stretches, as if watching something overlaid on top of the classroom. One afternoon, his teacher asked gently, "What are you looking at?" He answered, "The grid." "What grid?" "The one under everything." The retired chief visited again, this time alone with Ethan. He placed the old 1987 case photo on the table, the distorted shape between trees. Ethan didn't hesitate. "That's it. You seen this before?" "Yes." "When?" "Before this time." The chief's breath caught. "How many times have you come back?" Ethan tilted his head slightly. "As Ethan?" "Yes, twice." "And before that?" A pause. Different names. The chief realized something terrifying. The resets weren't rewinding the entire town. They were adjusting history around a fixed anchor. Daniel. The boy never aged because he was not meant to. He was a variable that kept exceeding parameters. And something ancient and patient, kept placing him back.
Same body, same age, new environment, new timeline corrections, like moving a chess piece back to its starting square. That night, Ethan dreamed differently. Not fragments, not fear, clarity. He stood inside the doorway, fully inside. Behind him was Briar Hollow, frozen. Ahead of him was a vast, dark expanse. But it wasn't empty. It was layered, like infinite overlapping versions of the town stacked on top of each other. Some slightly altered, some drastically wrong. Buildings melting, sky fractured, people standing still like mannequins. And in the distance, massive shapes moving slowly between layers. Caretakers, observers, architects. One of them turned and looked directly at him. No face, just intersecting planes forming a suggestion of awareness. A voice entered his mind without sound. You persist. Ethan, Daniel, did not feel fear. He felt anger. Why? The presence responded. You crossed boundary. You took me. Correction. You reset me. Containment. He stepped forward. I remember. Pause. Adjustment required. The dream shattered. Ethan woke up screaming, but not in fear, in frustration. His parents rushed in. He was gripping his own arms tightly. They're scared, he whispered. Who is scared? They didn't expect me to keep memory fragments. The chief returned to the woods with recording equipment, cameras, motion sensors. He set them around the clearing. At 2:17 a.m., every device activated simultaneously. Not motion, not sound, distortion. The footage later showed something chilling, the air folding inward like fabric pulled through a narrow slit, the outline forming, and for exactly 17 seconds, the doorway opened wider than before. Inside, multiple small figures were visible, standing, watching outward, children, identical.
When
Then
Ethan
the
stepped
doorway
through the
snapped
doorway,
shut.
he expected
Every
darkness.
battery drained
Instead,
instantly.
he
When
felt
the chief showed the
expansion.
footage to Ethan,
Not
the boy
movement,
stared
not
silently,
walking,
then pointed at one of the
expansion.
figures frozen
Like his
mid-frame.
thoughts were stretching
That one tried
outward
to
in
run.
every direction
What
at
happened?
once.
They erased him
Behind
instead
him,
of
the
resetting.
doorway
The
sealed.
chief felt
Not
sick.
violently,
You mean
not
he's
suddenly,
gone?
but with
Ethan
precision,
nodded.
like a system isolating a variable. The architects surrounded him. They did not move, they adjusted. Their forms were not bodies. They were intersections of impossible angles, shifting planes folding inward and outward. Looking at them directly made his vision double. But now, for the first time, Ethan wasn't seeing them with human eyes. He was seeing the structure. Layered dimensional grids, reality woven like threads across stacked planes, and Briar Hollow, just one node, one monitored experiment, one containment zone. You fear collapse, Ethan said, though he had no mouth here. Response came not as sound, but pressure. Human cognition not designed for upper-tier perception. You're wrong. Correction. Statistically inevitable neural fracture. Then why did I adapt? Silence. Processing. One architect extended a shard-like extension, not toward him, through him, scanning, mapping, cross-referencing. The pressure intensified. Memory fragments flared. The original crossing. Daniel stepping through out of curiosity. The first contact. The architects attempting immediate erasure. Failure. Neural elasticity. Containment protocol initiated. Loop reset. And again. And again. And again. You didn't predict growth, Ethan said. Unexpected adaptation curve acknowledged. You kept me 9 to slow development. Containment age selected for cognitive malleability. But you didn't account for memory bleed. Silence. The space around them trembled. Outside the boundary, Briar Hollow flickered faintly. Children standing awake in dark bedrooms, eyes open, connected. Ethan felt them. Not telepathy, synchronization. Fragments of awareness stitched together across resets. He was no longer singular. He was network. The architect sensed it too. Containment breach spreading. You can't reset all of them, Ethan said. Probability of global reset, catastrophic. The architects projected something vast, not image, scale. If humanity saw full dimensional layering, governments collapsing, religious frameworks imploding, mass psychological fragmentation, societal systems dissolving within weeks. You are ignition point. Ethan processed that. He understood. The architects were not villains. They were regulators, caretakers of dimensional stability. You protect structure, Ethan said. Affirmative. But structure without growth stagnates. Pause. The architects adjusted frequency. Their shapes flickered. In distant layers, other nodes shimmered. Perhaps other worlds, other experiments. You isolate anomalies. Containment preserves macro balance. What if balance requires expansion? Silence stretched, longer than 17 seconds. For the first time, time itself did not apply. The architects recalculated. Ethan felt resistance. Fear. Not emotional fear, structural risk assessment. Human awareness scaling beyond threshold unpredictable. Yes, Ethan said quietly, unpredictable. He reached outward, not physically, mentally, through the grid, into Briar Hollow. The children responded, hundreds of faint awareness sparks, not fully awake, but aware enough. The boundary rippled. Outside, the sky shimmered brighter. Adults froze mid-motion. Some felt déjà vu. Some felt panic. Some felt clarity. Inside the higher plane, alarms rippled through the architect network, containment destabilizing across node. One architect shifted closer. Alternative solution proposed. What alternative? Selective elevation. Ethan focused. Define. Gradual cognitive expansion over generational timeline. Instead of resets, instead of loops, instead of imprisonment at 9, the proposal unfolded. Ethan remains elevated, bridge between layers. Memory suppression protocol lifted slowly across population. Dimensional awareness introduced in tolerable increments. No collapse, no full reveal. Evolution instead of shock. You'd stop resetting me? Affirmative. You'd let me age? Affirmative. And no more erasing children who remember? Correction protocols discontinued. Ethan hesitated. He thought of the erased version, the one who tried to run. Why agree now? Network emergence exceeded projection models. They had not predicted collective anchoring. Containment had failed quietly. Negotiation became logical. Ethan turned inward. He felt the children. He felt their fear and curiosity. He felt the chief standing in the woods staring at the closed doorway,
You want bigger,
sensing something monumental
deeper,
unfolding
more powerful.
beyond sight.
So
he
we
felt
don't
his
end
parents
with a
at
staircase.
home, unable to
We
sleep.
open the sky.
Humanity wasn't ready for full exposure.
Years after the
but it was
negotiation,
ready to begin.
the world didn't
I
notice the
accept,
shift.
Ethan
Not
said.
consciously.
The architects
But
shifted.
something changed in the
Agreement
frequency of
encoded.
thought.
The grid
In classrooms,
vibrated.
children
not
began
violently,
asking
but
questions
deeply.
that startled
Across
their teachers.
Briar Hollow,
Not
clocks
what is
resumed
gravity,
steady
but
rhythm.
why
the air
does gravity
pressure
prefer
normalized.
curvature instead of pressure? Not is there life out there, but what would consciousness look like if it wasn't biological? The questions were different, layered, almost remembered. Ethan watched it happen slowly, exactly as agreed. No shock, no collapse, no screaming sky, just gradual expansion. But here was the part the architects didn't predict. Curiosity accelerates, it compounds, and humanity was very good at compounding. At 28, Ethan published a paper that changed everything. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't titled Proof of Higher Dimensional Oversight. It was subtle, careful, structured in mathematics. He described reality as a multi-layered informational lattice with regulatory harmonics. Most readers skimmed past it. A few stopped. 3 physicists in Japan, 1 cognitive scientist in Germany, 2 mathematicians in Toronto. They reached out privately, not because they understood fully, but because something inside the equations felt familiar, as if the math was remembering itself. Meanwhile, strange phenomena began increasing globally. Nothing catastrophic, just subtle anomalies. Shared dreams reported by unrelated individuals.
unexplained synchronized breakthroughs in distant research labs, identical symbols appearing in children's drawings across continents, a measurable increase in global pattern recognition IQ metrics. Governments ignored it, news cycles were too loud. But quiet thinkers noticed, and Ethan felt the grid humming stronger each year. Not unstable, awakening. At 31, he felt the architects again. Not a rupture, not a tear, just alignment. He was alone in his apartment when the room shifted perspective. Walls didn't move, space deepened. The presence unfolded around him. Human advancement rate exceeding projection band. He didn't look surprised. That was always going to happen. Acceleration curve unpredictable beyond threshold. You're worried. Monitoring. Of collapse. Of exposure. Ethan leaned back. You're still thinking in containment models. Silence. He continued. You agreed to evolution. Evolution is messy. Human systems fragile. Yes, but fragile doesn't mean incapable. A pause longer than before. Then, secondary proposal available. Ethan felt the shift. What kind? Localized unveiling. He stood slowly. Define partial. Localized reveal. Selective population. Controlled expansion. You want another Briar Hollow. Refined version. He shook his head. No loops, no cages. No loops. Then what's the catch? Risk transfer. To who? To you. The space tightened slightly. You become anchor point for unveiled population. Ethan understood instantly. If awareness surged too fast, if minds fractured, if panic spread, he would absorb the instability, stabilize it. How many? Initial wave, 0.003% of global population. Roughly 240,000 humans, scattered, connected, aware, not fully seeing the architects, but sensing the grid. And if it fails, dimensional rollback possible. He narrowed his eyes. You said no resets. Local only, not global. He thought of Briar Hollow, of the erased version of himself. I won't allow erasure. Agreement modified, no cognitive deletion. Stabilization through integration only. He considered. Humanity was ready for a leap, not a scream, a leap. He said, do it. The activation was silent. No sirens, no lightning, no portals. Across the world, 240,000 people paused at exactly 2:17 a.m. Some were teenagers, some were elderly, some were scientists, some were artists, some were mechanics, some were alone, some beside sleeping partners. All felt it. A vertical expansion of awareness, like reality suddenly had depth. Not hallucination, not delusion, clarity. They sensed the lattice, not visually, structurally, and somewhere, unconsciously, they knew they were not alone. The next day, subtle changes began. Forums filled with strange posts. Has anyone else felt like the world has layers? Does anyone else feel like reality is a system? I had a dream that wasn't a dream. Governments dismissed it as mass suggestion. Psychologists suggested stress-induced derealization. But the 240,000 found each other. Not through cults, not through hysteria, through mathematics, through art, through pattern recognition. They created models that aligned, symbols matched, equations harmonized. Ethan watched it unfold with quiet intensity. He felt strain, mild at first, like holding tension in a muscle, then heavier. The anchor effect. The architects were channeling instability through him. He did not break. He expanded. But here's what the architects didn't calculate. Human connection multiplies stability. The 240,000 began forming distributed networks, not physical gatherings, cognitive alignments, shared frameworks, meditative synchronization experiments, collaborative quantum modeling. The instability Ethan absorbed lessened gradually. The network stabilized itself. The architects recalibrated.
Self-stabilizing consciousness cluster confirmed. Ethan smiled faintly. We're not children anymore. Acknowledged. Within 5 years, the unveiled population grew organically. No second activation needed. Awareness spread mimetically, not as conspiracy, as insight. Humanity began integrating the concept of layered reality without collapse. Religious leaders reframed theology around dimensional hierarchy. Scientists proposed multi-layered causality models. Artists depicted staircases, lattices, grids beneath the sky. The word veil trended globally for months. And yet, society did not collapse. It adapted, because the reveal was gradual, because fear never spiked, because curiosity led. At 38, Ethan felt something new. Not from above, from beyond. A presence unfamiliar to the architects. It brushed against the lattice like wind against fabric. The architects reacted instantly. External system detected. Ethan felt tension spike across dimensions. What is it? Unknown origin. Threat? Undetermined. The presence pressed again. Gentle. Observational. Curious. Like humanity once was. Ethan's mind stretched toward it. The architects tried to limit interface. Contain. He resisted. No more cages, he reminded them. Risk factor high. So was I. Pause. They loosened restriction. Ethan leaned outward. The presence responded. Not hostile, not invasive, exploratory. And for the first time, Ethan realized the architects were not the highest layer. They were mid-tier regulators. There were higher observers, and beyond them, possibly others. The universe was not a two-layer system. It was infinite. The presence withdrew after brief
The
contact.
night the sky
The
revealed its
architects
depth
vibrated
did not
with
create
recalculation.
chaos.
Hierarchy
It
model
created
incomplete.
silence.
Ethan
For 12
laughed quietly.
full minutes,
You're not at
global
the top
internet
either.
traffic dropped
Silence.
by 38%.
Then, correction
People
accepted.
weren't posting. They weren't screaming. They were staring. Above every city, village, desert, and ocean, the stars looked different. Not brighter, not closer, deeper. Between them, faint geometric filaments shimmered like silver neural pathways stretching across the cosmos. Some saw grids, some saw spirals, some saw moving structures that resembled living mathematics. No explosions, no alien ships, no invasion, just truth without disguise. And humanity did not collapse. They breathed. Governments attempted statements the next morning. Most failed. Because how do you explain to billions that reality has architecture? Scientists rushed to telescopes. Every major observatory confirmed it. The structures were measurable. They emitted faint harmonic radiation previously filtered out as cosmic noise. Religious institutions split overnight, some calling it divine revelation, others claiming deception. But something unexpected happened. Conflict did not spike. Violence did not increase. Instead, curiosity flooded the planet. Universities opened emergency lectures. Live streams analyzing dimensional physics reached 200 million views in hours. Children drew the lattice from memory. And somewhere inside that web of silver depth, the architects recalculated once again. Humanity's stability exceeding upper projection. Ethan stood in his home, watching the sky through the window. He felt no fear, only expansion. "You were wrong about us," he whispered upward. Correction acknowledged. But there was something different in the response. Less clinical, more reflective. Within weeks, new fields of science formed. Dimensional topography, cognitive resonance engineering, harmonic cosmology. The 240,000 initial awakened humans became mentors, not leaders, not rulers, but translators between layered perception and standard cognition. They helped stabilize minds overwhelmed by the shift.
And remarkably, mental health crises did not surge, because the unveiling wasn't violent. It was gradual, like eyes adjusting to a dim room. But deeper currents were moving. The unknown presence Ethan had sensed before returned, stronger. It did not hide beyond the architects this time. It touched the lattice openly. The architects responded defensively. External intelligence confirmed. Observational class beyond regulatory tier. Ethan felt the tension ripple through the planetary grid. "Are they hostile?" asked Ethan. "Unknown. Intent unreadable." The presence brushed the lattice again. Curious, gentle, immense. Humanity felt it too, a collective shiver. Animals grew still. Ocean currents shifted subtly for 0.7 seconds globally. The presence wasn't attacking, it was scanning. Ethan closed his eyes and extended his awareness through the lattice. He did not ask permission. He had learned something the architects were still adapting to. Fear limits perception. Curiosity expands it. He reached. The presence noticed. And for a fraction of a moment, contact. Not words, not images. Scale. An awareness so vast that the architects felt small. Ethan did not. He felt recognized, as if humanity had just been marked on a universal map. The contact withdrew. The architects vibrated with uncertainty. Hierarchy reassessment required. Ethan exhaled slowly. "You're not the ceiling," he said softly. Acknowledged. For the first time, there was humility in their tone. Months passed. Human civilization accelerated. Energy systems redesigned using harmonic lattice extraction, zero-point fluctuation harnessed safely through dimensional alignment algorithms. Disease modeling transformed. Doctors began treating the body as a layered informational system instead of isolated biology. Lifespans increased gradually. Conflict zones cooled as global perception shifted from territorial survival to species-level awareness. Nationalism softened. Planetary identity strengthened. The phrase human species replaced my country in public discourse more often. It wasn't a utopia. There were still crimes, still disagreements, still flaws, but violence began to look primitive, outdated, like arguing over ownership of air. Ethan aged. Time still applied. Biology still moved. At 62, his body slowed, but his mind expanded faster than ever. He began teaching openly, not about the architects, not about higher observers, but about responsibility. Awareness without ethics collapses, he told students. Evolution without compassion destroys itself. He refused worship, refused
After
titles,
humanity
refused
stabilized the
monuments.
fractured,
He
braided
had seen
region,
what cages
something
looked like,
subtle
even
changed
golden
across
ones.
existence.
Then
Not
the
an
lattice
explosion,
shifted again,
not a
not
revelation,
above,
a
within.
redistribution.
Humanity's
For the
collective
first time
consciousness
since its
reached a
awakening,
resonance point.
humanity felt
It wasn't
less
planned.
like a species
It wasn't
climbing
triggered.
upward,
It
and
emerged
more like
organically.
a thread woven into
Billions
something
thinking
larger.
in layered frameworks
They were no longer
simultaneously
trying to
created
ascend.
harmonic
They were
alignment across the
participating in
planetary grid.
structure, and that realization reshaped everything. The next discovery did not come from explorers. It came from children. In multiple regions of Earth and across distant human-settled layers, children began describing the same dream. Not coordinated, not connected. A horizon without stars, a silent expanse, a faint pulse, and a feeling. Loneliness, but not human loneliness, universal loneliness. The reports were quiet at first. Parents dismissed them. Educators noted pattern similarities. Lattice analysts ran harmonic comparisons. The dreams aligned at 99.8% symbolic overlap. This was not coincidence. Humanity convened again. Biological representatives, lattice entities, architect collaborators. They searched outward beyond the braided regions, beyond the stabilized zones,
beyond mapped dimensional corridors. And they found it. A region without observers. A cosmic desert. No consciousness. No evolution. Just potential. Untouched reality. And it was vast. The higher presence spoke once more. Not in words, in orientation. This region was not broken, not hostile, not unstable. It was empty, waiting. The question rippled through every layer. Will you seed it? Humanity understood immediately. They were being invited not to conquer, not to expand territory, but to introduce awareness into untouched potential, to initiate a new evolutionary branch. This was beyond exploration. This was responsibility. Debate returned, not conflict, but gravity. If humanity seeded new reality with consciousness, what kind of consciousness would emerge? Would it replicate human flaws? Would it suffer? Would it evolve beyond humanity? Did they have the right? The higher presence remained silent. This was not regulation. This was maturity. A council formed unlike any before, not political, not scientific alone, not spiritual alone. It included children, artists, historians, explorers, biological elders, lattice elders, architect observers. For 7 years, they studied their own history: war, love, curiosity, cruelty, compassion, ambition, fear. They dissected humanity's entire arc, and a truth emerged. Suffering had shaped them, but it was not required in its destructive forms. Struggle generates growth, but cruelty generates trauma. If they seeded new consciousness, they would encode growth without devastation, challenge without annihilation, curiosity without containment. Not perfection, but balance. The seeding initiative began. It was not biological colonization, it was harmonic ignition. Humanity designed a harmonic template based on layered empathy structures developed over millennia, a blueprint for awareness that could evolve organically without imposed hierarchy. They transmitted it into the cosmic desert. The transmission lasted 111 Earth days. No one slept normally during that time. Billions participated in rotational cycles. Consciousness amplified. Lattice harmonics stabilized. Architects assisted. The higher presence observed. At the end of the cycle, silence. Nothing happened. For centuries. Many wondered if the seeding had failed. Explorers scanned. Architects measured. The higher presence remained unreadable. Then, 412 years later, the first fluctuation appeared. A faint oscillation in the seeded region. Not random, structured, primitive, consciousness emerging, not human, not derivative, distinct. It did not resemble humans' neural signature. It pulsed in triadic harmonics. It perceived not in spatial layers, but in temporal waves. It did not look upward. It unfolded sideways. Humanity watched, not interfering, not guiding, just observing, as architects once observed them. And something extraordinary occurred. Humanity felt protective, not controlling, not possessive, protective. They did not want this new awareness contained as they once were, so they made a decision. They would never cage what they seeded. No containment protocols, no regulatory oversight, only distant support if catastrophe threatened existence itself. The new consciousness evolved rapidly. It discovered structure. It questioned boundaries. It sensed the lattice faintly. And eventually, it asked the question, are we alone? Humanity waited, not with dominance, with patience. They allowed the new civilization to reach its own threshold, to build its own frameworks, to struggle, to grow,